You're. That's the corniest introduction I could possibly do. By the title of the video, you see what we're talking about. It's Kagurabachi. Now, Kagurabachi did not appear in Weekly Shonen Jump this past week. What's today? Tuesday? Yeah, it did not appear. It was on break this week, so I did not see the chapter come out. So we're gonna use this opportunity to kind of talk about everything before we get next week's chapter. I want to be able to talk about a few things, kind of like 6 things that I have in mind in terms of Kagurabachi because I really enjoy the manga and I really enjoy what's going on in the story, but I have some concerns. And by concerns, I don't mean like things I'm going to be nitpicky about, but more or less like the story, some aspects. Number one is Samura's daughter. That's the easiest thing to talk about because it just makes sense that she's just such a naturally gifted swordsman just like her dad, and it makes sense to me. And it kind of has some implications because now we have Hirohiko who's going to be fighting basically a mini Samura if he gets there. I think Chihiro will stop him before he gets to Samura's daughter, but if not, I wonder will Samura then step in if Hirohiko does too much because we already saw that Samura was not playing the first time we saw Hirohiko, so it's like he might not hesitate. He might just come in there, do the owl, cut him, leave, dip out. And it really depends. But I like this because there's so many elements, there's so many overlapping pieces that can happen. Like if Hirohiko does get past Chihiro, which I don't think he will, then he'll go to Samura's daughter, and then Samura will now have to step in. And then he'll have to face his daughter, and then they'll have to face each other, and that'll have to happen. And that's the moment where they can catch him off guard. There's so many moving pieces of this current arc that I really enjoy a lot. But it also makes me realize that like Samura wasn't crazy. Like this whole time we thought he was just this villain who wants to right the wrongs of the sword bearers, and then they have created some grave sin. And to me, I was like, you know what? Maybe there's something that we're not aware of. But I mean, there was something we weren't aware of, and that's the Shinichi user, and the way that he chose to crash out in a whole realm of people. That's 1,000%. That menace to society needs to be locked up. But it's interesting to me because Samura, the contract that's between the sword bearers, Samura basically has to kill the sword bearers anyway, and that's kind of the burden of proof because Rukahira latched or contracted all the sword bearers, the Shinichi user, so that way if he dies, they all die. But if they all die, he still doesn't die. But at least he'll be able to be killed without killing everybody else. But there's some loopholes. There's some interesting concepts about that because now it's like, okay, instead of it being like Samura wants everyone to pay the price of whatever happened, now it's more like the sword bears are contracted to do something, and now he's just trying to get it done the most convenient way possible and efficiently. So he's not just some killer anymore. He's not just some crazy guy who has ideals that don't make sense. He actually is doing something for the right reasons. Because we saw in that chapter, the way the Shinichi user that's not even a word. The way he looks like he could crash out at any given moment. And it makes sense because when this, what's his name? When the Sazami family, when he picked up that sword and he knew in that sword that it was going to tear him apart, like, and you're telling me that there's only one person who can wield that weapon, like, that's just, I don't know. They made the sword look like it only needs that user. And it makes sense because they basically grew together and bonded to such an extent. So you never know. Maybe the sword is what caused the massacre to happen, or the user. It could be both. It could be either or. I guess we'll never know until we see him. But what it makes me curious about is will he brush past the rest of the sword bearers, or will he isolate them to showcase them? For example, Aruha, they showcased him a little bit. He still got handed his L by Samura. But then the rest of the sword bearers that are still alive, are we just going to get the aftermath of the sword bearers already being dead? Is that what's happening? Or are we going to actually see them fight and use each enchanted blade? Because I thought that was the whole point of the story. And I will say that it's something like maybe it's not necessary, but for me, I would like to see it. It's kind of like in JJK when you see Urame and Hikari, and you never see the fight. It's like one of those things where it's like you can do that multiple times, but I don't see the reason why if the swords themselves are a key plot point as well as the bearers. So that's my issue with it. But all in all, I think the most important part is that the Shinichi user is insane. If he gets freed, he's gonna do it again. He's going to crash out on the entire city, country, whatever the case may be. He's definitely spinning instantly. He's spinning regardless. Everyone's not safe. But something I realized is that in doing so, we might be able to get Chihiro versus the Shinichi user because Chihiro is the only one whose sword is not contracted to the user. So, that means that as opposed to Samura being the one to hand out L's to everyone and kill so and so, maybe Chihiro is able to break the contract of the sword bearers even dying in the first place by having a sword that's not even in the contract to do so, and it's still gonna be counted as an enchanted blade. So I wonder if that's the loophole that we have available. But then it has me thinking, and I'm gonna go back a little bit. If Hirohiko versus Samura or Chihiro happens, there kind of needs to be some. There needs to be some in between. Like the Hishaka members can't just sit still. So Yura, Hirohiko, the other members that we have not seen yet are the heads of the Hishaku that have not played a part yet. I want to see more of them as well because they were actually looking pretty cool, pretty snazzy. But I say that to say that like the Shinichi user and Chihiro have to face off. In my opinion, I feel like that's the only way we have to go. And that might be arrogant to assume because it's really not the only way we have to go. But for me at least, that makes the most sense for the story. The person that's the closest to Chihiro's dad and is now the main crash out for the series, and his sword is the only sword that's not contracted in that regard. It writes itself, does it not? And I think it also shows that Samura is not as crazy as we thought because he couldn't even figure out. He never even seen Chihiro's sword before. So he was like, you know what? Worst case scenario, he probably is contracted to it. And then best case scenario, if he's not, then I saved him anyway. So I see where Samura is coming from. I do think it's still crazy, but that's the world we live in. But Chihiro, I'm really excited for because as soon as he blends with the sword and he gets his own understanding of the sword, I think that is what allows him to combat the Shinichi user. Because right now, we have not seen a user be that blended to the sword since. It's something that you can't escape. Like every time someone uses the sword, like even when Chihiro uses the Cloud Gouger, Sojo was not really a part of that process for the most part, even when the blade was broke. But every time you see the Shinichi, the Magatsumi sword, I think that's what it is, Magatsumi sword. Every time you see that sword, let me tell you something. The user is always in that chapter. It's always in the next page. It's like it possesses the user of whoever's trying to use the sword, and it's like that's the elephant in the room. Like that's the bigger elephant in the room. But then again, all the swords have their motifs and they have their own ties to the user. Like Samura and the owl, like Samura being blind, but the owl being the bird of knowledge, but can yet see everything, like a 360 vision. So there's motifs to each sword for each user. So I think that we have to find that motif for Chihiro and figure out how does his character blend in with the sword. Because I really want to see more application of what that sword does, besides the Nishiki and the Kuro. I think there's more to that sword than what we see, and that's why it's the only sword that's not included in the contract. But then again, we'll never know. But I'm excited for the next week's Kagurabachi chapter. And I'm really excited because Volume 3 is coming out soon, and I'm going to purchase it off the cusp. It will be purchased immediately. With that being said, y'all be easy. I got more anime videos coming out. I'm going to GalaxyCon this weekend, so y'all be ready. I will be putting a vlog out for that. Hopefully I record and remember to bring my camera. Keep me accountable. Y'all be easy. Peace.